Hi, mathletes. This is a video lesson about writing equations in point slope form using parallel and perpendicular slopes. At the end of this short video lesson, you will be able to write the equation of a line given a point on that line and a slope of a line parallel or perpendicular to that line.
So parallel lines are lines that never intersect. And perpendicular lines are lines that intersect at 90 degrees. So we should be seeing right here that they're going to connect at a 90 degree or a right angle. What information does this give about slope? So if you look at the graphs down here, I have a parallel set of lines and I have a perpendicular set of lines. Parallel lines, you can see that they have the same rise over run, up 2 over 1 in this case. But if they're never going to intersect, they have to run with the same slope. So parallel lines are always going to have the same slope. Looking at perpendicular lines, I use the red line is the same, it's just up 2 over 1. So the slope for the red line is 2 over 1. But for the purple line, we are going down 1, so negative 1 over 2 is the slope for this one. And all perpendicular lines, so if they have to make this like box right here and hit at 90 degrees like they do for perpendicular, their slopes are what we call opposite and reciprocal. Opposite means you are going to switch the sign. And the reciprocal means you flip the fraction. So when we're looking at one of the slopes is 2 over 1, and it's positive, the perpendicular slope would be negative, and instead of being 2 over 1, it's 1 over 2. Another way that you can check this is the product of the two slopes. If I take 2 over 1 and I multiply that by negative 1 over 2, the product of perpendicular slopes is always going to be negative 1, so that's a check for you. So we want to find the slope of the line that's given. We want to find the slope of a line that would be parallel and the slope of a line that would be perpendicular. So we are only looking at the coefficient of x. We do not need anything else for both of these examples. The slope is always the coefficient of x, so nothing else is needed. That's what we're looking at. So the slope of this first line is 1/3. Parallel is always going to be the same slope as the original line, and perpendicular is always going to be opposite and reciprocal. And remember that opposite means you flip the sign, so this was a positive slope, so our new slope is going to be negative, and reciprocal means flip the fraction, so it's going to be 3 over 1, or you can write that just as negative 3. I think it's fine to leave it like that. Looking at the second example, our slope is negative 2. I think it's helpful to make that as a fraction, so I'm going to write that as negative 2 over 1. Slope of a line parallel, again, is always going to be the same. And perpendicular is going to be opposite reciprocal, so these are negative. So that means this one is going to be positive, and you're going to flip that fraction. So we're going to write this as 1 over 2. You don't have to put the positive in front, but if those are negative, your perpendicular is going to be positive. Write an equation of a line that goes through 3, 6 and is perpendicular to y equals 2/5 times the quantity x plus 2 plus 7. So for perpendicular, we are looking for that opposite reciprocal slope of this line. Again, we only need the number in front of x. We don't need anything else in that equation. So the slope of this line is 2/5. If we need the slope that's perpendicular, you are going to flip the fraction, so 5 over 2, and switch the sign. So instead of positive, it's negative. So the new slope is going to be negative 5 over 2, and we need it to go through this point. So we're going to use point slope form, and we're taking this slope with this x and y and writing it in our form. So y equals negative 5 halves, x minus 3 plus 6 would be our equation. Write the equation of a line that goes through negative 1, negative 4, and is parallel to the line y equals 5. There is no x in this equation, so there's no coefficient of x, so we can't look at this equation and directly see the slope. But hopefully you're recognizing that when y is always 5, that it is a horizontal line, and horizontal lines have a slope of 0. So because we're looking for a parallel line, we know that this slope is also going to be 0. So if we have an equation that goes through this point, we're going to be looking at this and knowing that it's going to be y equals negative 4 as the line. You can do this in point slope form, y equals 0 times x plus 1, because minus a negative is plus, and then minus 4. So you can actually use point slope form when the slope is 0. Of course, 0 times anything right here would be 0, and that's how you end up with y equals negative 4. It's fine to write it in its simplified form like that. Write an equation of a line that goes through 8, negative 9, and is perpendicular to y equals negative 4 times the quantity x minus 6 plus 3. So we need to look at the slope again, and perpendicular always is going to mean opposite and reciprocal. So with the equation, it's perpendicular to this equation right here. We are looking at the slope, which is always the coefficient of x. We don't need anything else from this equation. We just need that this slope is negative 4. I like to think of that as negative 4 over 1 because it makes doing the reciprocal easier. So opposite reciprocal, we are going to, the opposite means it's going to be positive. Reciprocal means instead of 4 over 1, it's 1 over 4. So a positive 1/4 is our opposite reciprocal slope. Now writing our equation, y is equal to the slope, positive 1/4, you don't have to put the plus in, x minus 8 minus 9. So you have to look at the point that we have right here. Remember, in point slope form, these are going to be opposite. So if it's a positive at the point, it's going to be a negative in the equation. And then the y value is going to be exactly the same.